And for those of you just joining, we'll be getting started in just a minute. We're just getting in from one other meeting that we just wrapped up. Okay, Associate Superintendent Pfeiffer, it looks like we are recording the meeting, possibly streaming it as well. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir.
Okay, thank you. So we'll just hold on this. Well, we're on the stream. We'll stay on the stream, but we'll give it another minute or two for Trustee Prasad before we start our board budget subcommittee meeting.
Hello. Sorry, I'm late here.
Hello, Trustee Prasad. Thank you for joining us. So we are already on our stream. And at this point, I will open up the meeting of the budget subcommittee. Robbie, do you hear all that buzz, or is it
A lot of buzz.
That's not
Yes, we had to mute Trustee Zhang. So if you need to speak, Trustee Zhang, please unmute yourself. If there's
still a lot of static.
Yeah. Perhaps it might be better, Trustee Zhang, to post your questions in the chat, and I can read them for the group because the microphone has a lot of static.
Would it be easier or better for her to log off the call and log back on one more time?
Yeah, let's try that one time.
Trustee Zhang, would you try and log onto the call one more time, please? Thank you.
It also may be her hardware, right? Just be... But there's a good example of like, what is...
And thank you to any of our audience that's watching on the stream while we try this one more time.
Same static.
Yeah, it seems like it's a headset issue, this design.
Carla Cox, outside of Fremont.
So as Trustee Zhang is adjusting her microphone setting, we'll go ahead and get started. And again, this is the Board Budget Subcommittee meeting for our upcoming board meeting on Wednesday night, December 8th. And at this time, I will turn the meeting over to Trustee Prasad and Trustee Zhang. However, Trustee Prasad and Trustee Zhang, with your permission, before we begin the meeting, we will see if there's any public comment. I do have 2 attendees, and we'll see if either of them have public comment. Is that okay with both trustees?
Yes,
Okay.
please go ahead.
So I bring back your controls. So
I do see that Carla Cox has raised their hand. Carla, would you like to begin with some public comment, please? We'll set aside 3 minutes for your remarks.
Sure. My name is Carla Cox, and I am a parent of 2 FUSD children. One attends Matos Elementary. I am also a current member of the CBOC, the Measure E, Citizens Bond Oversight Committee. And I was not able to attend the last joint meeting in person, although I did view it. There was the joint meeting between the FUSD as well as the Measure E CBOC, and unfortunately I couldn't attend in person, but I did view it on the board website. So, okay, without all that being said, I just my public comment is that I am very concerned about the roof situation at Matos Elementary. My understanding is that the roof is in dire need of replacement, and that maybe for the last, I think this has been an ongoing issue. And my understanding is that the last time it was looked at, maybe 5 years ago. I did communicate with the principal my concerns, and I was told that about 5 years ago it was reported that the roof needed to be replaced or repaired, and that still is an ongoing issue. So my public comment and concern is just a very basic question as to what is the plan to replace and or repair the roof at Matos Elementary School. So, thank you.
Thank you, Carla. Thank you for taking the time to be at our meeting and to share that public comment. We certainly don't have an agenda item on this agenda for the roof at Matos. So I don't really have information on hand in preparation for this meeting. I know that our facilities team is regularly looking at our school sites and working on plans, and we will follow up with some additional information. Associate Superintendent Pfeiffer will make sure that we've taken your name, and then we can provide a follow-up message to you regarding the status of the roof and regarding what our future plans may be, whether it's done as part of a larger project, part of a maintenance project over the summer, or what the plans may be to address your concern, or perhaps the last time that it's been reviewed. I apologize that I don't have that information with me. Certainly myself and Associate Superintendent Pfeiffer weren't here 5 years ago, the last time that was reviewed. So we will follow up.
If I still have more time, I just wanted to add some more background information. Is that I'm
sorry, just to interrupt, you do have 1 minute left.
Thank you. I believe part of my understanding from what the plan was for Matos Elementary in terms of the repairs and improvements using Measure E dollars. Again, as I am part of that committee, I believe that one of the things that was going to be looked at was the roof. Now, I guess just to provide more background, it sounds like there was originally a plan to get the roof addressed in December, but I believe there was recent information that that plan has been changed. So, and I don't know if that has to do with some budget funding readjustments that have to do with Prop $51. And I think that that might also, I don't know if that's part of the discussion for today, for the budget meeting.
Mrs. Cox, if you
Yes.
can summarize your comments as you're reaching your time limit.
Thank you. So that's why it relates, I believe, to this budget meeting. So the intersection between Prop $51, Measure E funding, and the plan for Matos Elementary. So I don't know if that helps to add some clarity as to why I think it's pertinent to this meeting.
Thank you very much, Carla. We'll certainly take note of the public comment, and in terms of this agenda, the entire first interim, which covers every fund in the district, is on the agenda. So that's a very broad context, but the Matos roof itself, I don't believe is on the agenda, but certainly staff will follow up with you to provide a status update, and we'll certainly make sure that we're reviewing where we are with that as well. Is there anyone else who would like to provide public comment before we move into the other parts of our meeting?
If you do, please raise your hand.
Not seeing any hands. Since we only have one other attendee, I'll just check real quickly with the individual. Brian Gephardt, did you have any public comment you wanted to make?
No, I did not. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. With that, Trustee Prasad and Trustee Zhang, I will turn the meeting back to you to begin our normal process of reviewing the agenda.
Trying your technology to continue. So we hear a lot of static type noise coming from you. So we'll maybe you want to try a different headset if you're on speaker right now. Then so while you do that, we'll get started with the agenda here. Let's see. So we are on the consent calendar. So 11, the first one that has any financial impact. So maybe we get some update on 11.4 from Ms. Pfeiffer, or Associate Superintendent Pfeiffer.
Apologies, Trustee Prasad. Did you say 11.4?
Yes.
Okay. So 11.4 is the Title I, what we refer to as CSI, Comprehensive School Support and Improvement School Site Budgets. This, I believe, Associate Superintendent Pfeiffer, is our report on the expenditure of these Title I funds. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And this is a requirement that we put forward, and you can see that Vista, Robertson, Walters, Kennedy, and Robertson have submitted their plans. And for our public, you can see the dollar amounts associated with these plans. As a reminder, not all of our schools qualify as Title I schools, so not all of our schools receive the Title I and CSI dollars.
Okay, so I mean, this is my first time seeing this report. So for this meeting purposes, should we be reviewing any of the details? I mean, are these numbers similar to last time? Are they different? What should we provide as a summary to the public?
So these are plans that generally will come forward as part of single plans for student achievement that are reviewed by the school site council each year and approved at that level. And they have the authority at that level to approve the plans. They come forward to the board for review and final approval. We certainly could be looking at those, but what we're looking at here is an expenditure of dollars that are designed to support the school with additional programs. Sometimes it can be courses, sometimes it can be programs. These most of the time will come in the single plan for student achievement in the spring. We weren't certain if we'd be getting these funds.
Mhm.
And so they're coming separately, and that's why they're coming at a different time.
Okay.
For example, if you took a look at the Walters one, you would see that the actions align with their single plan for academic achievement goals. And most of these are aligned with plans and goals that they've already had in place.
Okay, sounds good. Then we can move on. The next one that has a financial impact are these is 11.7 NPAs, the NPS. So anything unusual here?
No, if I may, Superintendent Kamick, the board has already allocated resources for services for non-public school placements for our students. What you have in front of you is individual services that need to be provided. So while their budget's been approved and we have the resources to provide the services, we're asking the board to authorize the use of that money for specific students.
Sounds good. And after this, we'll still have a $3.8 million balance from the NPS budget for this year.
Correct. From
Okay.
what the board has adopted, has approved for expenditures to what has been encumbered and spent thus far, yes, we would still have that money remaining.
Okay. Sounds good. Then 11.8. So this is agreement with Varsity Tutors. So this is $45,000. This comes from, is this from one of our ESSER funds? Resource 6537.
Associate Superintendent Pfeiffer, the learning recovery funds are our ELOG funds, is that correct? Or Robbie?
Yes. So the Learning Recovery Fund is one of the new grant that Special Ed received this year.
Okay. And it's different from the ELOG and the ESSER funds?
That is correct.
Okay. And this Varsity Tutors, this program, is this something new that you're trying in the district, or have you had this ongoing before as well?
This is a program that's currently being utilized by 37 special ed teachers in the district, and we have a need for additional services. I don't have in front of me the usage or implications for our general education students, just our special education programs.
Okay. Sounds good. Then 11.9. So this is in assessments.
Is okay. So is my voice okay?
Yeah, now we can hear you.
Okay.
So did you have any question on any of the prior agenda items, Trustee Zhang?
I think I'm okay. I mean, there's a lot more important. I
there are
heard
more
what you said.
important ones.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so this 11.9.
It's funding for assessments for our students. We're required as part of the students' IEPs to be able to assess our students.
Mhm.
And this is to support those efforts.
Okay. Is that the one I remember each student is like 2,500, something like that?
This generally is for contracting with an independent agency for assessments.
Mm-hmm.
When we have a student that may qualify for special education, there's 13 primary areas where they would qualify for special education. We have to conduct what is technically referred to as psychoeducational evaluations.
Right.
So that includes a component of an academic or educational evaluation.
Mm-hmm.
And there are also assessments that are done by a school psychologist for the student.
Correct.
And there are occasions where we may need additional help from an agency for some of these educational assessments.
Right. So I remember that each student would usually from outside would cost like 2,500, something like that.
It can be a range. Could be 2,500, could be 5,000. Sometimes a little bit more expensive than that. A lot of it will depend on the scope and type of evaluation that's needed, and that can vary based on each individual student.
Okay. So I would like in the future, maybe we would see it's one student or two students, how many students we are, assessing. So I would know the change. Or that would be helpful. Okay. So do we know this is one student?
The way the agenda is written is it is an assessment. So I believe that is that could be considered to be one student, one assessment.
Okay. So I think in the future, let's just add, how many students is in the assessment. Okay, I'll pass on this one.
Okay, the next one is the Educator 11.10, Educator Effectiveness Block Grant Plan.
So this was a plan that came forward to the board in the last regularly scheduled meeting, and we're bringing it back on consent for approval this time.
So last time we had a public hearing and now we are approving.
Correct.
Last time there was no public feedback. So there's any change between, I think the amount is the same, but the scope of the focus of the fund has been changed or not?
No, it's the same focus and scope. So you'll see that the predominant amount of the money is focused towards coaching and the induction program. And that aligns with our current practices for our TOSAs and instructional coaches, as well as our induction program, which helps our new teachers clear their credential, which is a requirement of the state and the California Commission on Teacher Credentialing.
So can we actually improve or modify those plans as we go along? Let's say like coaching and induction. Let's say coaching. So when we invest those money in our teachers, do we also include kind of give them to see whether it's effective or not, and benchmark to see how effective those materials or the how should I say, investment is working in our school?
I don't think there's anything that precludes us from changing it. We may have to bring it forward to the board for a review. And we may have to update the CDE who's providing us that block grant of the change. In regards to the effectiveness of our TOSAs, it can be challenging to put a statistical number behind the measurement of their effectiveness. I think that our TOSAs are widely effective in the work that they do and how they support our classroom teachers with integrating new curriculum, with assessments, with supporting many of the data collections that take place. So I'd have a little bit of a hard time figuring out exactly how I put a data point behind that. It might be more anecdotal in terms of a survey, but I think the instructional coaching and TOSAs that we've used have been found successful by many of the staff.
Okay, so my point is, I have heard from the community some teachers are not teaching effectively. So when we use those programs to help them, so I want to see the result. That's my point. So while we're investing, we keep in mind, how to help those teachers to improve instruction.
That's definitely something that we can keep in mind towards focused professional development and support. And also it's worth noting that when we have a teacher who's not performing to the level at which we might desire, that generally falls on the shoulders and responsibility of the school site administrator to be helping with that issue directly, because that becomes more of an evaluation and personnel issue. There are times where they can be supported by our teachers on special assignment and instructional coaches. So that's definitely something, Trustee Zhang, that we can keep in mind.
Okay, thank you.
Correct. And just to add to that, because we have more funds that we could be applying to it, the site leads could become the implementer of the program, but we can help them with additional funds and resources to improve the general quality of instruction. And one thing that we've heard from the community and also in the last conference is standards aligned grading. Would that be part of this area too, standard aligned instruction on how we are educating our teachers on their grading practices as well? And is that some language that we should add here?
Well, that certainly could be something that the board could discuss in the meeting if they'd like to. I don't believe that the plan in and of itself as it's written is specific to standards-based grading.
Mm-hmm.
And so we may have to look at that. I couldn't necessarily say definitively what the direction would be from without the entire board, but I don't think that it was in the original plan of the grant to focus on standards-based grading as opposed to standards-based instruction. That doesn't mean that as part of that work, grading isn't included in the conversation. When we talk about standards-based instruction, we're often talking about things like, what is it that we want the students to be able to do based on the state standard that's required? And the secondary part of that conversation is, how do we measure a student's performance towards that standard? So I don't want to say that it wouldn't be part of the discussion, but I don't know that the written plan itself calls out a specific focal area of grading.
Yeah, we can have a more detailed discussion in the meeting itself, I suppose. But as long as the language does not preclude that, then we may be in a good enough spot, right? So, okay, sounds good. Then moving on to 12.1, payroll is about $15 million, about normal. Anything extraordinary to report there?
No.
Same thing for 12.2. The amount is smaller than normal in this situation. Is that a November, December slow period?
Well, this report encompasses November 1st to November 30th.
Okay.
There may be a little bit smaller number based on the fact that we did have a fall break in there. I think generally when we see a number smaller than normal, or larger than normal, it's oftentimes related to Fund 21, our building fund, which can have much higher dollar amounts associated with it. And in this report, I believe the expenditure for Fund 21 is just under $185,000. So that might be why it's a smaller amount, because there are times when we have expenditures there in the millions, depending on what's happening with the building in the district.
Okay. Then moving on to 12.3. agreement with Sugimura Fine Architects. Now, here it just there's a general comment about various projects district-wide with not much detail. So is this is that usual? I mean, normally I see some detail.
If I may, Superintendent Kamick,
Please,
the district has multiple projects. Rick's Early Learning Center is one of them. And recently we've experienced multiple requests for changes, for increases in budgets and change orders. You may recall that at the last board meeting, we had a large number of change orders that were approved by the board. Some that, and so for this upcoming meeting in December, there was a submittal of another large list of change orders. And so having seen that, I decided to ask for authorization to bring a contract for this consultant so they can assist us in actual review of the change orders. And I'm calling a meeting with the general contractor so that we can go through them and make sure that if for whatever reasons they're overlapping with existing ones, so the services that we're needing are the services of an independent contractor that can look at these change orders and look at the trajectory, not only of the ones that we've already approved, but the district initially awarded a $4 million contract for this project. What did we get for the $4 million? And why is everything that's happening in that campus is now a change order? And so there's a lot of questions that that I'm hoping to answer before we bring another request to increase the budget for that school. We also have other projects that are coming that need that particular analysis as well, and that's why it's not specific to a project, so that we have the flexibility to engage this particular firm in reviewing potential change orders for any of our other projects.
Okay, I mean, this is, to me, this is a good way of creating checks and balances in the process, right? And we have been asking a lot of questions on all the change orders, so this will help us have crisp answers to those and potentially find issues with the change orders, right? And save us money in the long run.
Exactly.
Okay.
I have a question on this one. So before this, let's say this potential position or this investment, do we have any capacity in evaluate change order? Who is doing that? Do we have anyone?
Yeah, so we have multiple staff that are reviewing change orders.
Uh-huh.
We also have consultants such as Vanner that are a part of that process.
Right.
Change orders don't necessarily happen in isolation in a vacuum, but when we continue to see some projects that are seeing more change orders than others, this is a good chance for us to take somebody or a group that is an expert in the field, an expert in the industry, and give us a checks and balance. And so while we do have internal capacity, and that could happen through our director of facilities, our associate superintendent is reviewing change orders, but this gives us an outside lens to give us another level of checks and balance to make sure that we're being good stewards of the public resource.
Mm-hmm.
And making sure that what is being asked on a project is properly required.
Okay, so let me ask, do we have a time limit, like how many hours is limited, or is it based on 1 year, unlimited questions?
This is a not to exceed amount of $75,000, and the average cost for the hourly rate is $100 an hour. Traditionally, the rates that we see for construction management firms and others is about $160 an hour.
Mm-hmm.
So I was able to negotiate a lower rate, and lower hourly rate for these assessments, for this review of these change orders, and be able to
Got it.
feel confident that that if we're going to bring another request to increase the budget for that project,
Mhm.
that I can track all of these changes to the beginning, and not just to the beginning, but when the contract was actually awarded and what we were supposed to receive for the initial $4.3 million that we awarded this contract. And the biggest one is, why are we getting
Yes.
every single thing that happens is a change order? We need to change a lock, it's a change order. We need to change a door, it's a change order. Well, what did we get for the first $4.4 million? And that's the analysis that needs to be done, and that's why we need the support.
Exactly. I think we may need this one for some other project going, because Rick's Grangler is going to close by January, right? So I have a lot of questions on that. Many change orders in this board meeting, so it's much needed. But we may not be able to use them for this one. Yes.
Actually, I did pull that item.
Oh,
and
you
it's
did?
It's not going to be in front of the board for approval, because I do want that review to occur prior to us bringing it back.
Okay, that's wonderful. But then is that going to be affect our opening date for Rick's?
Mm,
The Rick's Glencler campus is already seeing some things that may affect the opening, and we're working with our staff right now to
Yeah.
make all the final determinations about if and when we'll be able to open in the winter break. If not, it would get pushed back. Luckily, all of our students that would be moving to the Rick's campus are already housed elsewhere. So if we do need to delay the opening by a little bit of time, we can do that and still meet the needs of our students in their current location.
Okay, that's wonderful, because I like that move. Too many. Yes. Let's move on to the future.
One more question on this one. So you've chosen this one vendor. Was there any competitive analysis done with other vendors? So did we pick based on our experience with them?
experience with them.
Okay.
And they were on our approved vendor list as well.
Okay, sounds good. Then moving forward, 12.4, this is about Rick's, and Trustee Zhang, you were saying something about them.
Oh, right.
So this is additional issues that we found with their.
This is not the Early Learning Center Rick's project. This is the Rick's Glancler site that's located near one of our elementary schools. So we have early learning centers. We have the one at the one that we're referring to now, and then the one that we're reopening, right? So we have about 6 classrooms in one of our other schools that is going to be relocated. And the ones that are here, the ones that you have in front of you right now, we're not relocating, but the facility, their playground padding for the students that are also the early learning center for our special needs students is in dire needs of replacement. And so we're asking the board to authorize the replacement of that padding because the students will remain at that location. So at the last board meeting, the board already approved funding for the playground equipment of the Rick's Early Learning Center.
Okay. And then for the other case, we had some question about Fund 40 and how much money we have. So from a fund perspective, that's the right fund to pull from?
Correct.
And what would be the remaining balance after this in that fund?
So currently we have an ending fund balance of 2 million. Let me see, this is 2,496,000. So it will still have 2.4, a little over $2.4 million after this is completed.
Okay. Sounds good. Then we can move on. Next one. So then the next one that has that is budget related is a regular item, the first interim budget report. I haven't had a chance to study this myself fully, so maybe Associate Superintendent Pfeiffer, you can give a 2-minute highlight of this. And and then we can ask
Absolutely.
questions.
Absolutely, more than happy to. So the district has completed or concluded their analysis of the financials from July 1st through October 31st, which is what the first interim report covers. Within that period of time, we were able to identify expenditures that we could utilize some of the new federal and state funding, that's one-time money, which helped tremendously with the increase in the ending fund balance for the district. And the reason why we want to see an increase in the fund balance is because of the many obligations that the district has starting next year. So the district's ending fund balance this year is increased. We are now at over 12% of our reserve, compared to when we started at 7%, almost a 5% increase. This is going to be extremely helpful to us because of the following commitments that we have made. The first commitment is to address the needs of textbook adoptions that need to be addressed in this year and the next fiscal year. So our first interim report will be able to accommodate, it's already included in the budget, the textbook adoptions that are needed. Included in the multi-year projections, we also have, first of all, the good news is we're not having a conversation about reductions. We're not having a conversation about cuts. So our first interim does not show any need for reductions at this point in time. We are accommodating the cost of textbook adoptions. We're also accommodating the cost of new programs. If the board chooses to open Lila Brinkhurst next year, we've already included the cost of 6 teachers and the office staff to be able to open that school next year if the board chooses to. We also included in the multi-year projections the requirements to provide transitional kinder to our students. So we added not only additional teaching staff, but also we've added the need for paraprofessionals, because the transitional kinder is going to require that we offer the program, and that for every 12 students, we have an adult in the room. So that's also been included. So the good news is, one, we're able to increase our fund balance to help us with the declining enrollment and the reduction in revenue that we're going to see next year. And we're able to address the programmatic needs from our students next year. And then the year after that, we're also including the cost of our 6th graders going into the middle schools that are being modernized at this point in time. So that cost is also included. So our multi-year projections show us having the necessary fund balance to maintain our positive certification for the district.
Now,
And that's just a summary.
okay, go ahead, Trustee Zhang.
Okay, I think it looks very good, the number, and help me to understand one, which is the beginning balance. From the adopted is 44.8, and then the first interim becomes 77.3. And so I'm thinking that the beginning balance is the one that you already know. Why now during the interim, now it's changed?
So what we're seeing here is when the district closed the books, the district is, if you look at, let me see, the second chart on the agenda, you will notice, on the agenda item, you will notice that there is right in the middle of the second chart, there's something that says plus the beginning fund balance. So the general fund is we're looking at having a $427.1 million revenue, and we're looking at expenditures of $438.6 million. That is going to require, so that means that we're deficit spending $11.5 million. Deficit spending means that we're spending more money than what we're bringing in. And when you do that, you want to have a good beginning fund balance. So the district, when we close the books, we have a $77.3 million beginning fund balance. Because of the deficit spending that the district is estimating we're going to have, our ending fund balance is going to change from $77.3 million to 65.8. And then the district has a designation of $12.8 million that are that brings then our ending fund balance or our reserve to $53 million or 12.08%. So I hope that answered your question. We started the year with a 77.3 after we closed the books, and that's going to be brought down to 65.8 minus designations to $53 million.
Okay, I understand. But so it's only when you, after you close the books, you can truly know the number of the beginning fund balance?
Correct.
So,
Because
yeah,
the
why is
rest
that?
of the time they're estimates.
And we did some moving expenses from general fund to some of the dollars that we got, right? And those
Correct.
were restricted.
The restricted.
So that was a good thing that the district did to use the restricted dollars in our previous school year. So that's why the fund balances went up.
So that's why, you know, we use the what's a restricted, and then we save the unrestricted.
Mhm.
And that's okay. That's exactly what I want to find out, the reason behind it. Okay. So I'm looking at multi-years budget, and so that number has already include the teachers' elimination positions.
That is correct. And that's in alignment with the declining in enrollment.
Right.
So the district had experienced a declining enrollment this year. However, instead of making severe adjustments to staffing, we identified how many staff members were supposed to have been adjusted based on the declining enrollment, and we charged those costs to the categorical programs, to the restricted programs. So starting next year, those restricted programs go away, and we've given ourselves a 1 year, this year, grace period to be able to make the necessary adjustments in staffing 1 year after we needed to make those changes. So the principals are aware of the changes that are coming their way because they know that all of these teaching positions were now being funded out of categorical programs, which end June 30th of this year.
Right. Okay. And I also see that your assumption of special ed stays the same. So do you see the trend of special ed expense going up or down or stays
going
flat?
up.
Oh, it's going up. But your assumption is pretty much flat. I see that. I think the number is the same over the next 3 years.
I'm not sure where you are seeing
The multifamily, yes, the multi-years projection, which is but anyway, I see it somewhere. But that's okay. I think it's just we have to make assumptions, and some assumptions we oh yeah, I see on the page 79 on the book. Said a contribution of a special ed program is estimated at 51.2 million in the current year. The contribution is projected on 51.4 in the year after, and then 51.8 in the year after that.
So it's a slight increase.
Yes, slightly. Yes, like $200,000 increase. Okay, so I don't have a further questions. But one more question is, with this reserve of, let's say, in the third year, how long does that give us the time to sustain our school? Is it easy or hard to calculate? You know, we have like what? By the third year, we have a 9%?
Yes. And that's above the required 2% reserve plus the 1% that the board is required that we have. So that's on top of the 3% required reserve and a $5 million set aside.
Right. So that would become like equivalent to sustain our school for a month. That's what I mean, our reserve. Is that
One way to think of reserves,
Mhm.
Trustee Zhang, is generally a school district's mandated 2 or 3% reserve that the state requires.
Mhm.
Remember that all school districts are required to maintain a 3% reserve,
Mhm.
except for school districts that are above 32,000 students.
Mhm.
They can maintain a 2% reserve.
Mhm.
But as a general rule of thumb, unless it's changed in the last few years, 3% reserve would cover payroll for all employees for about 5 to 6 weeks.
Okay.
And so it's not, that reserve is not an emergency reserve that should be considered one where the district can continue to operate for a significant period of time. It really truly is an emergency reserve. And generally, when you fall down to that level in a true fiscal condition,
Mhm.
you're starting to talk about the state coming in to take over your programs.
Mhm. Okay. That's my question.
So
And the
then
district is not, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just didn't want to leave us with that note. The district is not in a situation where we're anywhere near having the state come in and take us over.
I know. This is
Just
good
making sure.
situation.
That's the last note. I wanted to be positive.
no. I have more notes after this, right? So let's see. The expenditures going up. So we are now projecting 438 million for this year. Um, what was the number for our ending number for when we closed the books on last year? And how much higher is this?
It's higher because this year we have the influx of one-time money.
Correct. And we are spending that money, right?
And so we're spending the money this year.
Mhm.
So you're going to see a decline in expenditures compared to this year, the following year, in areas of materials and supplies. And so in comparison to last year, there is a chart, but it's on the presentation. Let me pull up the presentation so I can share that with you. It's on the presentation with the agenda.
So you partially answered the question that I was expecting, that we have one-time dollars that we are trying to spend and have impact on today's students with their learning loss and stuff, right? So having that one-time expense is good, but with deficit spending, the concern always is that it's harder to maintain revenues, but it's very it's harder to increase revenues, and it's even harder to reduce expenses once we get used to those, right? So as we see declining revenues, or what we are projecting over the next 3 years, then we have to manage the expenses properly as we go forward. And likewise, I have a question on designation. So I don't know if you have your chart open, you can give me the numbers.
So so the unaudited actuals, this is the in 2021, we saw revenues of $432.5 million and expenditures of $387 million. We see an increase in expenditures this year from 387 to 438 for first interim because of all the increase in revenue. But in 22-23, our expenditures go down from 438 to 411, and our revenue goes down to $400 million. So this year is higher because of all the additional funding, but the following year, there's a reduction in expenditures as well as in revenue.
And we'll still be sort of projecting a almost $11 million deficit funding.
Correct.
And using up our reserve for that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. I mean, we'll have plenty of detailed discussion in the board meeting.
Mm-hmm.
But it's good to see the reserves go up, right? and be prepared for the looming cliff, so to speak. Now, I also see that your designations are much higher than what we planned for in the beginning. Is that also related to one-time dollars?
So the designation we had at the 45-day was $14 million just for the cliff. Our designation now is $12.8 million, of which $3.8 million is restricted and we can't touch. $500,000 is for our inventories and also our revolving account that we also cannot spend. So then the only designation that is the 1% variance of $4.3 million. We also have a designation of $3 million, almost $3.1 million, to address the public employees' medical and hospital benefits, which is your PEMCA, the minimum contribution. And then the other two are areas where it's the designations include both restricted and unrestricted, and that's the $12.8 million.
So did you say that in the 45-day revise, the number should have been 14 million?
No, we added in the 45-day of 14 million set aside for
That's it.
for the decline in enrollment and the cliff.
Mhm.
At first interim, we're not designating the same $14 million for the following year. We're allowing it to drop to the reserve because we're going to need that high level reserve to be able to cover that loss in revenue the year after that. And that's why you see the decrease in our reserve,
Okay.
because we use it to cover the loss in revenue.
Mm.
So when we know that we're going to have a loss in revenue, the thing to do is to plan for it. And what we've been doing in the last 4 months is planning for it, right? By looking at expenditures, transferring it to restricted programs, increasing our ending fund balance on the unrestricted side, so that when we receive rush revenue, we're prepared to take that hit without having to eliminate programs and continue to provide the programs that we have told our community we're going to be able to provide.
Sounds good.
Okay, before we go forward, I so you mentioned that we are prepared for 3-point-something million for the employee medical expense, which is the one that I received the letter, right? And the $149 per employee.
Correct.
Yes, that's the PEMCA issue. And
Okay.
for those who may be watching, Fremont Unified was notified by CalPERS July 21st that there was an error in how the fee was being paid towards CalPERS. CalPERS is our benefit provider. CalPERS requires that for any employee who's participating in the benefit program, that a fee of $143 is paid to CalPERS. And we have about 650 employees roughly at this time that are participating in the benefit program. Effective November 1st, the district corrected the mistake and has factored those calculations into all future budget projections. But we have a set aside to deal with anything that we may need to deal with in the past. And we have an obligation to negotiate the effects of that with our employee groups at the bargaining table. And that's something that we're in the process of doing.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Okay, thank you. So unlike all our most of our prior budget subcommittee meetings, we are going to run overtime.
Oh boy. Okay.
So,
I did not know that it's 6 o'clock.
yeah,
Okay,
so
let's hurry up. Okay.
The next one with the financial impact is 16.6, agreement with Washington Hospital. Is this something new or a renewal? I see that we have the table here. Anything extraordinary to report here?
I just think it's worth noting this is a much higher dollar amount than usual, but it's also a 3-year plan. And this is something that is not only required that we have the athletic trainers, but also a very successful program for our comprehensive high schools and their athletic programs. I would note real quickly, trustees, that although the demographic report in and of itself is not one that is financially based, It is returning to the agenda from our last meeting. And of course, we know that the demographic study and our enrollment projections impact our staffing and facilities greatly. So I just wanted the public to know that that report is coming back to the board again. And as we close out 16.6, Trustee Prasad, to your question, it is more expensive than it has historically been, but it's a 3-year contract. And I think it's a great arrangement for our student athletes.
Okay, I also noticed that in the note, it's in the past, we only hire half-year coaches, and this time we hire full-year, full-time. So that's the reason. So so do we need a full-time coaches?
For athletic trainers, yes, it would be my professional opinion that every comprehensive high school that offers interscholastic sports should have a full-time licensed athletic trainer. When you talk about the physical health and safety of students, the need to evaluate concussion protocols, I think it's very good for schools to have full-time licensed athletic trainers to support their student athletes in their sports programs.
Along with the note, I think since we have those full-time coaches, trainers, I mean, we should get more programs, you know.
Well, these are just athletic trainers, and their job is to help support students who are injured or recovering from injury. So these are not athletic coaches that are coaching teams or coaching players directly. These are specific to helping students who are injured recover, also interfacing with doctors who may be referring the students back to playing, and then making sure that paperwork for physicals and everything else are complete in terms of the student eligibility.
Yeah. But I'm thinking since they are going to be, we're going to pay them full time, we should have more program and have more athletes so that they can get more help.
Well, I mean, we have programs that run the entire year, right? So
yeah,
or different sports that happen at different times of the year. So I see value at having somebody available throughout the year.
Yeah, absolutely. I support that. So shall we move to next one?
Yeah, let's move to 16.7. Now this is for improving learning for elementary schools. I see that 2 options were considered. This was picked. I don't see, was there a dollar amount for the other option, or was it not a fit for our needs?
Well,
I'm not sure what the dollar amount was for the other option, but Fontes and Pinnell, their leveled literacy intervention is a very successful program used by a number of districts. And so I know it certainly has a very solid reputation. I couldn't speak in the moment to the cost of the other program, but Fontes Pinnell is a very established publisher with literacy intervention.
Okay. It'll be good to understand the negatives of the standards plus the other option and the dollar amounts there.
Hey, I want to, okay, please go ahead.
So just to my prior question, is this type of intervention we are looking for just for 1 year, or would this be more of a recurring expense for us?
It should be short time. Because
The leveled literacy intervention text, I believe, can be used year over year. So that would be a benefit to us. But the students' use of the leveled literacy is intended to be short time. So it may depend on how long they need that literacy intervention, but the levels will allow them to move through different levels of literacy intervention. And part of our MTSS work would be, as you heard about in a prior board meeting, assessing the student, providing that leveled intervention, and then reassessing the student to see if they moved out of it.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so this is especially for the tier 3 for the intervention students. And so my question, maybe we'll ask during the board meeting whether they have a similar program in the ELOC funds, because I remember we have many programs, or this is one specialized in literacy and for tier 3 students. So, I mean, I can bring it up to the board meeting.
Okay.
Okay. Just a final point on this, as we discussed in the budget conversation about the first interim. Any of these added expenses, we have to closely monitor that they are reducing again. Okay, then moving on, the next one with an impact, budget impact is 16.9. This is
Here, the 6.08, we're still waiting to receive the information, right? Regarding proposed energy service proposal.
Yes. The presentation should be sent to the trustees and posted on the agenda shortly. It's been shared with the superintendent secretary.
So we're going to get it today?
Yes, the presentation, yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. So 6.9, sorry.
16.9, if I may, Superintendent Cameron, is pertaining to the use of contingency within the contract for Black construction, and those and the board authorizing the use of these change orders. Our director of facilities shared with the boards a similar agenda item at the last board meeting and indicated she would be bringing this item, which is the utilization of contingencies. So the way that this reads is there's a contingency that was built into the contract of $1.7 million from the developer and $1.7 million from the district. The utilization of these funds will have still a remaining balance of $1.6 million in the developer's contingency and $500,000 in the district's contingency. And this is for Black construction. And the project is it's an expenditures for the Thornton Middle School.
This is a huge list of items here. I see some negative amounts in this. Are those items in the original program that are no longer needed?
It's a credit. So when we, just as we ask for something new, we see an increase. If something is removed from the scope of work, then we see the credit.
Okay.
A negative.
I'm so not used to seeing credits.
I know, as a negative, we hate negative numbers.
I love it in this situation.
What is the meaning of a T&M tags? There is many T&M tags. False account directive T&M tags.
This is time and material. So we're being charged for time and materials.
Oh, we're being billed for time and material.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So going forward, are we going to continue use this leaseback contract? Or this is an old contract?
Mm-hmm.
Are we going to continue use this this kind of a contract of leaseback?
We're going to be evaluating the utilization of the multiple ways to deliver construction projects as the construction projects continue, as we identify construction projects going to either their full bid process. This is another model. We will be evaluating the models that we're going to utilize in our next projects. Unfortunately, these we've entered into this agreements and we have to see them through.
Okay. So there are so many items here. I did not look at that in detail. There are some big ticket numbers there, like a revised grading plan. I'll probably send my questions over email.
Yeah, that's the next one is 16.10. That's another change order, amend agreement with the CMP Environmental. So this one, Associate Superintendent, are you gonna put this one off the list? This is a Rick Rankler Early Learning Center.
Mm-hmm. The two, this particular item and the item after that are services that need to be paid. And that's why they're coming forward to the board.
Okay, so these are not a change order.
These are amendments to contracts for services. So the two pertain to the identification of mold and the remediation of mold, both contracts, two vendors that work hand in hand. And a lot of that work was completed and an adjustment to their contract had not been brought forward. You may have received communication from one of the vendors, and this is to address that communication.
Okay, that's why I received that, they have not got payment, right? There is email on that. So this work is done.
My understanding, and we can check with our director of facilities tomorrow, but that's my understanding.
Well, I hope it's okay. Is that going to be done, or is it going to be performed, or it's already done? Because now at this point we're still talking about the demolition work. It's already end of the month. You see?
My understanding, I believe, is this work has already been completed, but we will have confirmation.
Okay.
With our director tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. That I think we covered both 1610, 1611 in that conversation. So then moving to 1612, Measure E bond financial report.
This is an informational item. The board has been, this is, I believe, the first one that's brought forth to the board this fiscal year. And a couple of things to note on here is we account for the funding that was received by the district for the reimbursement of work that's been done for some of our projects. So the district has earned in the Measure E program $13.2 million in interest, and we're anticipating an additional $1 million this year. That will bring us to about $14.2 million in interest that we've earned from the sales of the bonds that have occurred. We've sold $523 million so far. In addition to that funding, the district has utilized E-rate funding to be able to complete some of the projects. As far as the question that existed about the funding for Prop 51, which is our request to be reimbursed for work that was done using Measure E funds, the district has received approximately 12, 13, 14, approximately $15 million in reimbursements from the Office of Public School Construction for work that's been done using Measure E money. The board's going to be asked to authorize, you may recall at one of the board meetings that staff had received direction that the interest that was earned was supposed to be deposited into the contingency account within Fund 21 or Measure E. And at that point, that direction had not been confirmed with the board. So we're going to ask the board to confirm that direction for all interest to be earned, that's earned by the Measure E, to be deposited into the contingency account. There's also a ledger of all of the contingency use of funding that has taken place thus far. And you will see that in the report we're showing that there is a negative contingency of $13 million. And that's because we took out the interest because the board had not officially given that direction. We're going to ask the board to officially give direction, and that's the recommendation of staff to be able to deposit, which will take care of that negative in the contingency. And then the board will decide at a future date, the staff will be bringing a recommendation on what to use the funding that we received, the reimbursements we received from the Office of Public School Construction for projects that have already been done. And one of the recommendations is the issues of the roofing, as you heard from Ms. Cox. There are some concerns with Meadows, but there's also other schools that we are prioritizing the need for the roofs to be repaired, and the district staff will be bringing a recommendation to use some of this money that was reimbursed by the Office of Public School Construction to address the needs of our roofs in the district. That will come at a later date.
Okay. Do we already have a plan to send the staff to check on each site to look at the condition and having a list of a
Yes.
urgent repair?
So the district has had the evaluations done.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have evaluations, and we have the list, and we have the list prioritized by which one's the ones that we need to take care of tomorrow. Not tomorrow per se, because these roofing repairs, you have to be careful not to do them in short. So the winter break is a 3-week break, 2-week break.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot complete a roofing project in that period of time. So I don't know. There was Ms. Cox commented that these repairs would take place this December. We don't have a contractor. And when I spoke to the director of maintenance and operations, he was very concerned about starting a construction project in December with 2 weeks of time to complete it, because it will not be completed. So roofing projects are usually summer projects. So what you're going to have is we're going to come to the board and ask the board to allocate the resources to do the repairs. We're going to provide the list. Once the board, if authorizes us to move forward, then we're going to hire an independent consultant that is going to provide the specs of what needs to be done to each roof. So then we can go through the formal bid process and allow multiple roofers to come in and give us proposals on the repairs for our roofs. So we have an idea of what the needs are, and that's what we're going to use to bring to the board.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're going to formalize the specs that we're going to need in order for us to go through a formal bid process.
Okay. So let's start early, because can we, maybe January or February? Because by June, right, is the summer already.
Absolutely. And so our goal is to bring this request to the board at the next board meeting in January. Today, we prioritize the list of the schools. We have a total cost and the resources that we want to ask the board to designate for this purpose is the reimbursements we've received from the Office of Public School Construction.
Okay. All right.
So is your expectation that we'll be able to meet most of what's needed with this 15 million, or is it's going to be too short?
No, for roofing, we'll be okay. There's other needs, right? But roofing right now is our priority. And there would be enough to cover the roofing costs that we need to address of all of our schools.
And roofing is where, when the moment you open things up, you find more dry rot, and the scope expands very rapidly, right? And so
That's correct.
we want to avoid surprises. Okay, I mean, when this comes up, we can discuss in more detail. So that was the last thing on the agenda.
Yep.
Okay,
So
we are 20 minutes over.
yes.
There should be a penalty for this.
We'll see you on Wednesday.
Yeah, see you all on Wednesday. Thanks.
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Stop recording. The more button. That one. The up arrows, or the one more over. Oh.
That's the
that way.
captions.
Yeah.
Stop recording.
And then get the confirmation right there on this side.
Oh,
Yep.
stop recording. Okay, stop recording.